much about some of the antecedents of the drivers to relationship. This week we're continuing on chapter 5, which looks at the same stuff. Who can give us a briefer? What is in there? Who can just give us a summation of it to kickstart the class? Perhaps you can even join into issues that you come across in the week or something. So who can give us some information? Something to kickstart with. Yeah. These days I'll start calling them because I have some people who don't talk. You never talk. Wednesday. Yeah, Thursday. We have 3-4 weeks now. You never talk. Alright. Yeah. Let's say, yeah. Tell us something about it. Yeah, but it's not forward. Yeah. Really? Condolence. Alright. Go on, sister. You say something about it.
It has to do with factors that actually motivate people to relationships. That's what we are talking about values. And these are the elements we're talking about. Is where you perceive that probably you are not sure something. Typical example is being for the insurance company. So for you to, or for the supplier or the provider of that service, you need to give reassurance. And that's why, because of the risk. So you have to do that for the person or the consumer to trust you. Help building trust.
Thanks. All right, so generally we're saying that, like taking up from last week, we're saying that there are certain drivers that actually shape, relationships. When we actually talk about relationship marketing, there are certain factors that actually would shape it, or that actually facilitate or kind of enhance our likelihood of being in a relationship. And it works both ways. So what we're saying is today we're talking about risks, salience, and emotions, trust and commitment, closeness, customer satisfaction, and inertia as factors that actually facilitate what relationship building. So I think what Melanie was explaining is that last week we talked about higher cost, the ratio, the relationship transactional ratio. If it's heavily centered towards relationship, then it means that transaction prevails. Or if the ratio is lower, then of course it makes sense for you to be perhaps in a relationship. But again, we also talked about the industry type, lending itself to relationship, the structures of the organization lending itself to relationships. Now going further, we're saying that there will be other factors that actually facilitate or that shape, people's willingness or underpin, organizational people's willingness to be in relationship. And we're saying that one of them is risk, the other is salience and emotions, and then the rest of them. So our usual style, how does low or high risk, shape up or underpin whether we will be in a relationship or not? Can somebody tell us? You have, Melanie has actually given an example. For example, if you buy a car, and like we said last week as well, if you say that you buy a Mercedes car, Mercedes-Benz, fresh car, very, very posh. Now, the risk of you taking that car to, say, a garage, all right, could pose a problem. To you don't know how they're going to be able to maintain that car. And you don't know the expertise level. As a result, you'd rather want to be in a kind of relationship with the distributor, or the supplier, so that you're sure of absolute quality in terms of maintaining that particular vehicle. So your risk level, actually, or the perceived risk, actually shape up our understanding or our preparedness to be in a relationship. On the other hand, if it's a lowly involved product, let's say Choco Milo, do you really care? No? Because it doesn't cost you much to do away with it. You can cut company or you can cut away 2 cities or 3 cities or 2 pesos or whatever, if it goes bad. So you don't really feel the urgency to do it, to be in that relationship. On the other hand, if you happen to be a distributor of the chocolate, you are actually having a large scale. All right. So in your case, it will be different. So it could be the same chocolate, but depending on which level, or depending on which area of the chain that you fall within, you would either have a relationship or not, because that will determine your risk level. Because if you're a wholesaler of chocolate, the risk level is not only you losing money if the chocolate goes bad, but again, health concerns. All right, health issues because you're selling it to the wider people, and other factors. And then again, your own profit, interest tied in there. That would influence, to be in relationship. So we're saying that risks, as in lowly involved or highly involved, products or purchases, have, their own attendant risk perception. So the way you perceive risks and how you handle it would actually motivate you to be in relationship or not to be in relationship. What about salience? Can somebody tell us about salience? Salience. Yeah. Okay, so tell us.
It's the importance that you attach to it. So just like you say, if you attach much importance to the product you are buying, then you will want to take time to make a decision to influence your future.
Yeah, so just like the Mercedes-Benz example, the importance attached to the product would also inform, your level of relationship, whether it has to be transactional or relationship-based, So do you actually perceive, your purchase as most important? I mean, the particular purchases that you're doing, especially when it comes to financials and financial, loans and those things. Because of the level of importance we attach to that, and then you want to understand it much better, you would rather want to have that kind of relationship approach to maintaining them and to, dealing with the business. Then the same as emotions. So again, emotion. What is emotions? What is emotions?
Yeah. It's a complex human response.
That's right.
Experience.
So emotions is always, is a combination of some kind of responses that is actually, that you come out with. So for example, how do you feel about something? And I think that it's a kind of responses that comes from both your your observation, your thought processes, and all the psychological issues that actually goes with it, and how you react. So it's kind of like an end product of your thought processes, and then any other observations that you make. So how do you express, how do you express yourself towards a particular thing, a particular transaction? Now, if that expression has emotional component of it, which obviously expression usually has that emotional, whether it's negative or positive emotions. All right. Also define the way we relate. All right. Which means that, let's practicalize it. If you are dealing in a product or services that has some of these components, all right, which most of us do, wherever we work with, has some of these things. But again, some industries or some sectors would have risks much more attached to it than emotions. But you see, the issue is that wherever there is risk, you're likely to have equal measure of emotions. All right. Wherever there's anticipated or perceived risk, there's emotions out there. Who would say that it's not emotional about this 1 billion in the bank? You either get excited every day, or your heart will be beating when you see the exchange rates and everything is fluctuating. You understand? So I think that it will be safe to say that wherever there is a high risk, there's a high emotions. Wherever there's a low risk, there's a low emotions attached to it. But then the importance may be different. Depending on the way we are. There are some people who place premium on materials. If you are not the type that plays premium to the material, you may not necessarily be very, very, you may honestly, kind of project is the level of importance about physical stuff or material stuff. Or maybe you have enough, so you don't really care. I mean, if you have enough, what do you care about 1 billion? You know, so the importance may be different. Perhaps also, depending on who you are, your emotional attachment to that also may be different. You know, but of course, then is the risk as well. So I think that these three actually go hand in hand. Because if you're a billionaire and then 1 billion is nothing to you, obviously the risk factor is also low. You perceive low risk, isn't it? Because you don't actually hold it much in terms of the importance you attach to it. So I think that the three goes hand in hand. And we can say that it's contextual as in the industry type, the product involved in it, even the person who is dealing with your characteristics, you know, towards some of these things, or your behavior or attitude towards some of these things, would inform how you perceive these issues, or would inform whether you have to relate in as relationship or transaction. All right. Trust and commitment. Okay, let's scroll down. So we're saying that the risk as perceived probability of loss. So you are perceiving, you know, the possibility of loss, you know, of a particular, you know, transaction. Now, in that case, if you actually hold that, you know, in high esteem, then of course your risk aspect, the risk perception is a little bit higher. If it's a low esteem, it's a little bit low. And then we're saying that salience as prominence of the exchange. So how important, how prominent is that particular exchange to you would also determine the kind of relationship you have with the two partners, that is you and then the supply. And in the same way, emotions as a result of the exchange and personalized services. Services that have kind of personal attachment, personal component to it. And we can actually look at issues like health. You know, no one would say that when it comes to health issues, personalized issues like health, you don't have that attachment. All right, it's about you dying or you. So we tend to have, and that's the understand, we tend to have much more relational approach to issues that deal with, you know, personalized issues. And that's why something somebody may think is trivial, but it's important about haircut. Right? Honestly, the guy who did my hair didn't do it like this. I have just did this way. I'm not a secondary barber. The guy did a tabletop thing. I keep saying this. You know, I go to him, he did, the first time I did my hair, he did a tabletop. And I wasn't happy, so whenever I go with that, so I leave my hair up to some point. I went there the next time, he did the same tabletop. This is the third time I've been. And the guy is doing the same tabletop stuff. Exactly, I'm thinking of not going there. And last night, I think was it last night or tonight, I was thinking about why is this guy doing the same thing, even though I tell him to make it round, you know. Then I realized that no, he has a tabletop himself. So he's anchored in his head. And that's exactly, somebody said this the other time in class. That these barbers have some kind of image in their head, and that's what they do. Somebody said it in class. Yeah, you said it. Exactly. Seriously. That's what is happening. That's the style. And he can't deviate from it. So you see that and he gives you that tabletop stuff. You know. So now I'm looking for a new stylist. Maybe you look for a barber. Yeah, you know it. You know how to do it. That's good. That reminds me. I remember when I was in shop, the first time we went to a barber, and then the guy was a Caucasian. So I didn't know because, I mean, that city, there were a few black families. So I was looking for barbers. And I went to sit there because there was a barber, there was a lady. And I could see that she was uncomfortable. Because I think she hadn't done the hair, you know, before, black hair before. But then at the same time, she can't tell me that she can't do it. Because she thinks I may take it to be racist. And I was just sitting there. I didn't know, you know, I was racist. So when it got to my turn, the lady, you can see that physically she was shivering. Holding your hair, doesn't know how to cut it. I said, Jesus Christ, I'll put this one in trouble. She did it, but you can see the pressure, you know. So yeah, sometimes people are very comfortable but they can't really see whether they can do it or not, and that kind of thing. That one you can excuse. But those ones that you think they can do it, and then they give you a different style altogether, more than what you bargained for. So yeah. So we say that personalized services, like we have talked about, again, we have that type of emotions attached to high risks we anticipate, and therefore it defines our relationship, towards the supplier. Trust and commitment. And I would say trust is about confidence that you actually repose in someone's integrity. Do you have that level of trust? And you see, in our daily kind of interaction, it looks like trust is somehow for the given, isn't it? I mean, you stand by the roadside and you stretch your hand to stop the taxi driver. Immediately, that shows that you've imposing some trust in him or in her to take you from one point to the other. Because by virtue of you driving, I mean, the processes that has actually preceded to that point of him driving, it's certified, isn't it? You assume that he's been to the school, the driving school. He's been certified with the cars. The DVLA had given him license, so, he registered the car and all those things. So immediately you think that there had been some prior activities that had preceded him driving on the road. And as a result, immediately, based on that thinking, you just stop it. Assuming that there was no prior processes, assuming that there was no prior process, we don't know about the fact that if you want to drive, you have to learn how to drive, you have to be certified, give a license. We'll be a little bit cautious stopping people to sit in their car. Am I right? We will be. Let's assume that someone is driving a private car, not a taxi, driving a private car, and the person is say parked there, is not moving, it's parked. But then you are going to ask the person to give a lift. Would your thought process be different from him being in a taxi?
Of course.
Yeah. It would be different. All right. For the taxi, because it's marked taxi, there's an immediate understanding or awareness that he knows how to drive. To the point that we even stop taxis when our cars break down. We stop taxi driver to come and check what is wrong, because you think that the taxi driver would know how to fidget with the car and everything. So we immediately repose some level of trust, some level of integrity in certain professions or in people because of where they stand. All right? Quite clearly. I mean, if somebody says that you work in a bank, immediately you think he understands the credit balance, the debit balance thing, you understand this loan thing. You start asking the person certain questions. All right? In the same way, in our relationship with industry and our relationship with suppliers and what we call buyers alike, we tend to have this confidence in their reliability and then integrity because of what they've been doing, the prior information that we have about them. All right. So if the company has worked in business, has been in business for the last 20 years, vis-a-vis a company that is in business in the last 5 years, automatically you think the 20 years one is more credible, is more reliable. All right. So you have that trust in it. So these are some of the things that goes in our relationship as well, as businesses or as individuals. The fact that a company has been in existence for 20 years, you want to establish some relationship. Because, again, you foresee low risk, and that ties in as well. All right? Your risk level actually is low when the more years the company has been in business. All right? And you see, because these things interlink, the fact that the risk level or perception of risk is low, inadvertently you are reposing trust. Are you with me? Inadvertently you're reposing trust, confidence in that organization. So there are certain characteristics, be it demographics or whatever, about institutions that end up we thinking whether we should establish relationship or not establish relationship. Okay. And then again, individuals in the business can also give you that particular confidence, or that particular link to that particular trust. And that is why when companies poach certain industry players, there's a huge advert about it. There's a huge news, attention. Like a typical example, I didn't know, but when I came into this country, I heard about under and that kind of thing. What's his name? Yeah. And I was asking myself, who is he? And I understand that he's one of those big industry players. All right. Why do you have to make noise about him? Because customers will follow. Maybe the company's performance would. Some big people, especially the big corporations, poaching of staff actually sends their shares, high. So you have a particular, for example, this guy, the guy who designs Apple, Apple earphone, and the guy, I think he's a Prince. Should that guy leave Apple to Samsung? You see a complete change in the industry. And that is what it is. Characteristics of individuals or the businesses, how long they've been in business, and their insight alone can make us repose trust and therefore have some kind of relationship to do with the transaction or otherwise. The other time, I was telling someone who agrees with me that if, and that is maybe in this country, but if it were elsewhere, if it were to be some regimes, some places, Victoria Hammer could be a billionaire by now. Who agrees? Yeah. Corporate will go for her immediately. She understands the market. Supposedly. She understands the politics of things. She understands the most, the top 1% Ghanaians. All right. Just give her a desk as a corporate banker or whatever they call it, private banker or whatever, and she will swing in almost all the monies because she knows them. You get it? Political figures, celebrities, and things are huge when it comes to corporate. And that's why the UN will use Angelina Jolie and things to go, because the trust level is enhanced with these public figures. And some of your colleagues on TV understand. You want to?
I was trying to like see, depending on what the person is.
Yes. Yeah.
Assuming it is something that may come along with then the image of the company, if you bring that person, how is that managed?
Agreed. So you see, the issue is that was it established that she did it or she didn't? It was a conversation. And if you look at the public discourse, almost the country was divided into two. All right. There were people who thought that, why do you say that? She said if she can, or if she had a way she could make a million. You understand? There was no firm conclusion whether what she did was wrong. You understand? All of us, and even having listened to the tape, I thought that the other guy who was, or the person who was actually led into that particular conversation. I don't know whether you were familiar with the tape. And you could see the pattern, and I think that those who do discuss will be better placed to interpret it. If you look at the pattern of the conversation, it was as if the other guy at the other end was driving her towards making certain comment, so to speak, baiting her up. All right. So when you don't have that clear-cut opinion on her, you can make millions out of it. But of course, if it's damaging, then of course the media people would know how to manage that one. That's very good. I think it would be very difficult for a corporate organization to buy into that. But if there's no clear-cut opinion on it, even sometimes if it's damaging, it's not damaging to a certain segment of the society, and therefore she can take a backseat and do the back jobs. All right. After a corporate Ghana, would they really be bothered about she being maybe private banker? No. At the top there, the machinations that actually go on there is entirely mind-blowing, you see? But when it comes to us, they will make fuss about it. Man, this is peanuts. You understand? The things that go on at the top there is entirely mind-blowing, and you have no idea. So would the top 1% Ghanaians see her as having done the most abominable? Oh, no way. I mean, that 1 billion, whatever she was talking, it's a chicken fish, man. You understand? People are charging billions and billions. You are talking about 1 billion, everybody's like, oh. there was a joke, they say one Nigerian said, oh my God, if people are talking about building houses and we are saying corruption, they build the houses, they sleep with it. As for Nigeria, we buy ships. They place you know, but if people buy houses, they still money they buy houses. That's a joke. You know, and you are complaining there's corruption. The house is in Ghana now. You know, but for Nigeria, they will buy ships and planes and they will fly it around. That's a joke anyway. You see, so that's the thing, the perception about society and things. You know, we place you in that category. Do you establish relationship based on certain factors or not? I mean, would that lead to trust? Again, the same question you're talking about. If the character is such that it's questionable, then of course you can't bring it because the trust level will then wane. And then again, it's your target market. You know, the target market is what's the demographics of the target market? Will they see her as no, and as a result will breach the trust? If yes, then of course you can't use that individual. So we have what we call a proper person test. You know, you've got to do a proper person test and see whether that key figure that you're bringing in will win trust and will actually repel relationship. Right, so that's some of the considerations. So we're saying that trust reduces risk perception, of course, you know, because they go hand in hand, or it can enhance risk perception, depending if it's a negative trust. And then reduces transactional cost. Again, how does that do that? Can somebody operationalize this one? Trust reduces transactional cost.
Yeah, in some settings where you have to enter into formal arrangements.
Yeah.
Maybe you need a lawyer or...
That's it. That's it. So, you see, because if the trust is not there, you've got to have certain mechanisms to keep the relationship in check, so that people don't abuse or they don't go contrary to it. So, in replacement of the natural trust, you want lawyers to put the thing in black and white, and then people will sign to commit to the relationship. The reverse is when you think, oh, there's a mutual trust, and therefore forget it. Handshake is enough. All right. Now, it makes it expensive if there's no trust, because then you've got to bring in the legal teams to prescribe how we have to behave, and to commit and to say that if you have to go against that, you pay 10,000. So the 10,000 is actually being there as a check for us to be committed, for us to be committed to the relationship. But it is costing you money because of the legal introduction of the legal proceedings. All right. But even then, let's forget about the legal proceedings. What else do you think you can increase the transactional cost? What else? If there's no, say that this person hadn't actually demonstrated any questionable character that would lead you to not to trust. But there is something about human beings. You know, there's information asymmetry. Usually, the person knows himself better than you do. And especially in transactions, like in a relationship, business relationship, you hardly know people on a personal grounds. So you've got to then fish out more information about them, all right? So banks will go to the credit bureau, all right, to find out information about this individual, Augustine, whether he's credit worthy, he pays on time, you understand? It's increasing the transactional cost. All right, the credit bureau, the police, what do you call it? The CRB, the criminal record, files that it's all cost. Even if it's not the case, you may have to sit on the internet and be doing checks. All right, you'll be doing checks about the individual. It's cost aspect because you're involving time and all those things, and then even end time. You understand? What else is the cost? And remember, in marketing these days, when we talk about cost, we don't mean the economic cost. There's a psychological cost. Worrying about whether the person would heed to the process. All right. So you end up brooding over it. You go and sleep and say, hey, I thought you could have mama in 10,000. You understand? It destabilizes you. So psychologically, emotionally, you've been destabilized until the transaction happens. Then you are now stable. But for 1 month, if it hadn't happened, my friend, you're every day brooding over it and just praying to God that this guy doesn't vanish. Right. So these are some of the cost aspects. And we're saying that when there's resistance of trust, it reduces the cost, implications, both economic and emotional or psychological. Right. However, if it's existing, if non-existent, it increases. Promotes adaptive organizational forms. Adaptive. The existence of trust promotes adaptive. Adaptive means that you can actually, change at any time. All right, and that's true. When there's a trust, the bureaucratic structure is what actually elevated. Is eliminated, like we said. Because you can decide to do things without the LPOs. All right, usually you need LPOs for something to go on. But you can say that because there's the existence of trust, LPOs is not necessary. Oh, this is necessary. Go straight to the. You've changed the organizational structure from the hierarchical to a flat process. All right. So the existence of trust would actually help you, or can actually help you, to adapt to new trends, to new things. If there is new technology now, and it's going to change the face of the competition, and there's a trust between you and your supplier, quickly you can adapt and let them come and install the system immediately. However, if there's a lack of the trust, you want to follow the bureaucratic process with the legal document and everything else, so that just in case somebody deviates from the norm, they've got to pay for it. All right. So the existence of trust actually facilitates what? Adaptive organizational structure, or makes the organization much more adaptive and much more responsive to prevailing trends. And then facilitates rapid formation of ad hoc work, like we just discussed. Ad hoc. It's facilitated because you may tell your relationship guy, forget about, you don't need this man, he always pays on time. No, forget about this paperwork. Let's move straight to the meat. You get it? So it facilitates that. Effective response to crisis. Again, it falls underneath that. Any question? Clarification? Somebody can give us an example. But there's caution though.
Yeah.
There's caution.
Exactly. Caution is what adhered to.
Yeah.
There's this big customer we used to have. Because he was very strong, had a value muscle to be able to turn around certain commercial stocks.
Yeah.
We were taking things for granted.
Yeah.
Over 3 years, we realized we were just buying and talking and taking commission. So there was a lot of stock sitting in the guy's warehouse, some nearing expiry, and what have you. So sometimes caution is very important in such trust.
That means your control measures have to work. You know about the marketing, popular marketing, the SOSTA, marketing strategy. Have you heard it? How many of you have done CIM or have been doing CIM? It's common language in CIM. SOSTA. You know SOSTA? What is SOSTA? Situation analysis, objective setting, strategy, tactics, action, and control. Your control has to be intact. And that's why I had a problem with when the government said that again, I share you harmed them. When the government said they suspended their confirmed project, because they realized that the government agency didn't have the capacity to measure whether there is return value for money. And then I questioned, I said, oh, do you really have to start the project before you have that mechanism? You don't. From common CIM, we know that when you set up the strategy, the control is part of the strategy. All right? The control and implementation the control is part of the implementation. So from the word go, you're able to evaluate whether there's value. If there's no value, you have measures, control measures to what? To turn it off. But do you start it, and then in the midst of it, you say that you just realize that you have. Because when you are setting up the plan, and you get to the control section, and you are writing the items, item 1, in control, do this, do this, do this, you would know whether you have the capacity or you don't have the capacity. All right. If you don't have the capacity, then you've got to look for the capacity. But do you start the process, and then in the midst of it, you come and say that you don't have the capacity to measure whether you're delivering value? That was a non-starter. But I'm sure that they just smuggled that argument in. They know that doesn't. But anyway, that's one side of it. So you always have to have that control mechanisms All right, you always have to have that control mechanism in the whole process. You know. All right. Any questions? So, like we're saying, when it comes to that relationship where you take things for granted, you have to have some alert systems. You know, for example, were you going there maybe quarterly to check? Maybe were you going there maybe 2 months or 3 months or 4 months to check, half a year to check, or yearly to check? If you don't do that, you know, you take things for granted. And I'll give you a typical example. My own brother had some relationship with another company. The company is a mining firm, you know, here in East Lagos. The office is in East Lagos, but the operations is in the Western region, Takwai areas and all. And they've been doing business for a very long time. Established a fantastic relationship where the guys in the office, they can just call for them to go and do the work without LPOs. That's how the relationship was done. It's gone to a point that the guys even have some houses in Takrady, and you ask my brother to look for tenants. So you see, the relationship has gone to key accounts where it becomes even personalized and all that. All right. Then this company, and that's the trend I'm telling you, this company now started experiencing shortfalls in profit. I think the industry was changing. So they now started having fiscal problems, like what do you call cash flow problems. When they started having cash flow problems and they were not paying the money, then the CEO started asking, so where's your LPO for this job? Where's your LPO for this job? You get this? Because the resources are not there to pay now, he's asking for LPOs for them. And then he goes, no, but your guys have been calling, and this is the tradition. They've been calling us to just go and do the job and they'll pay. And there's evidence to show that 4 or 5 payments have been made without any LPO asking, without any other documentation, but the evidence that the work had been done and is corrected. But the catch was that the guy who used to be at the site from South Africa, he died. He went to his home country, he died. There was a German that replaced, and he changed the whole game. You get it? So now, the key guy that was there who attests to the fact that jobs have been done and things, and then has that established relationship, is gone. The company's profits is being paid, and there's no consistent, kind of flow of resources. So the entire relationship takes a particular time. So even if the relationship is such that you think that the partners are going to be like, know that when there is an impact, the environmental impact, when the economy takes a turn and the resources of this company takes a turn, when there's a massive competition hitting this company and their fortunes start changing, you can then start having issues with your relationship. Then the trust issue, that why are you not showing me document of job that they have been done? Help you.
I think it also has to do with culture.
Yeah.
Because of the change in impression level.
Yeah, that's
in Africa or maybe countries in Asia,
yeah,
the trust is very high. You don't have to have written documentation.
Yeah.
But because of the German guy, Western culture is one everything. Right?
That's right. That's another cultural diversity. People's approach to work is entirely different. All right. The European would have more emphasis on written documents. The Asians would have much more interpersonal dealings. Handshakes is enough and things like that. So these are some of the things we have to bear in mind.
I also think that in spite of the level of the trust that you impose on the person, I mean, you shouldn't forget yourself. One day, something serious can happen and can result in maybe in a court where maybe they will demand written document to prove whatever you have done. So in spite of any level of relationship that maybe the company will have with any customer, there should be something there, evidence to prove that that relationship is ongoing.
That's good. Yeah. What else? Anybody has anything to say? Alright. So commitment, again, trust and commitment we're talking about. One other of the parties' intention to act. So the attitude towards interacting with each other, importance of relationships and desire to continue. Loyalty, reliability, and stability, desire to continue the relationship by constantly investing in it. That's commitment. You only depict or you only demonstrate commitment when you are constantly investing in the relationship. Are you calling? You know? Are you obeying certain tenets of the relationship? You know? What's the distance between you and then the other part? I mean, that closeness and things like that. That actually shows some commitment, even in our own individual relationships. All right? Commitment is defined by these things, the effort that you're making in it. When there's one party having a laid-back attitude, then there's a lack of it. You know, then your commitment is actually questioned. So you can see that these factors also were interrelated, trust and then a commitment. Could you actually say that in the relationship there exists maybe trustworthiness, but there's lack of commitment? It can't be. You know, because your attitude towards the relationship, acting towards the relationship, your effort towards the relationship, inadvertently what informs the trust level. All right. So the regularity of you communicating and getting things across would enhance trust, you know, over time. You know. So as the more committed you are to the relationship, the more trust, you know, you regain in each other, the commitment.
Yes, you know, we haven't mentioned collateral, but I'm thinking, yes, I'm thinking it should be the basis for both trust and commitment because of, for example, fraud.
Yeah.
I can build trust and commitment between yourself and myself on organizational levels, having in my mind an ulterior motive that I want to defraud you or I want to dupe you.
Yeah.
But because of the commitment and trust you have reposed in me without taking into consideration some form of collateral, how much you know me, or for example, where you can find me, I can easily be able to defraud you.
Yeah, I agree. So that is what we said earlier, that the personal characteristics have to actually come into the relationship as the basis. Because if you don't know the person much, like you're saying, you know, obviously you're actually starting from a weaker position. Now, the person can then build the commitment, and as a result, enhancing the trust level until the time that, you know, it happens, boom. And then you're like, wow. But see, motives, when it comes to motives, and I'm sure the law people will actually, you know, sometimes they argue about this thing, whether somebody's having a motive to cause harm or to, you know, what's the legal position about it? Whether you can be pre-warned or forewarned, you know, to know that the person actually harnessing the relationship just to dupe you. You know, in a way, when it comes to, like in England, for example, when it comes to relationship between elderly and young people, they have something called brooding. You know, like you are actually grooming. You are actually grooming the person in order to cause harm. So you let a person come to a point where they repose a lot of trust in you, only to shatter it by causing harm. You know, it will be difficult for somebody to really figure out what your intentions are. But of course, you've got to guard against it by having other measures. And that's why we were talking about the fact that in the business sense, you don't want to do away with the paperwork. Although you have that trust build, you know, you don't want to do away with the regular checks, you know, going to the side maybe quarterly to check whether really the guy is selling the goods. Only to realize that Charlie, the guy, they found the thing up, you know. So there are certain things that have to be in place in order to guard against certain ulterior motives, you know. So I think that's the key. So yeah, we've got to look at that collateral angle. You know. To what extent do we get to know the person? Actually, you can build trust and commitment without necessarily getting to know the person. You know, because the person has shouldered themselves in a cloud that all that you've got to know is about the business person. It's about John as the businessman. You know, the rest of the relationships you may not know, and you take it for granted. Typical example, I think that's what happened in Austria, which has happened in elsewhere. This relationship, you remember the story? The guy who had locked his daughter. Yeah, several years. He impregnated her several times. They've given me. I mean, you ask yourself whether the woman in that house, the wife, didn't know. But yes, it's possible that she didn't know. She's built commitment and trust all together for all these years. But the man had presented only him as the husband. All right? So you know him as the husband in that sense. The rest of it, you can't tell. So that's crucial. Knowing the person in a holistic manner, you know, from that business aspect to the other aspect is crucial. And that's why some businesses will go extent of doing this, golf together, you know, some socials together. It's not only just because to facilitate, but to get to understand who you're dealing with, you know, and to give you much more insight about the person. So it's crucial. You know. Yeah,
we should also be looking at examples like regular checks. For example, the story that you are giving now. It means if we are to ascertain that truly the woman didn't know, then she was only observing what the man presented, and not finding out things on her own. Yeah. For example, there was this example when we were doing the first degree that some guys were able to enter the accounts of, I think, Stanchart or Ghana Commercial Bank, create accounts for themselves, and then requested for ATM cards, got the ATM cards, and then we were withdrawing money. They were debiting on computer, debiting their accounts for the money, and withdrawing until I think after a quarter or two that the bank was able to know, because they were not depositing any amount of money.
It's always going up.
Of course.
So if they were smart in depositing, perhaps they may not have been caught.
No, they didn't go into the bank with cash in their hand to deposit.
Yeah.
But they did that on the internet. Yes.
Every time online.
Every time online.
But
then they go to the ATM to withdraw.
So they deposit online and go to ATM.
Yes.
They go there personally, of course.
Yeah.
Because you need to get your
passport and all that.
And then you'll validate.
That's interesting. Yeah, so some of these things are crucial in relationship building and things. What else? What other clarifications do we have? Examples?
So false pretenders.
False pretenders, yeah. So they build a profile of theirs in a particular way. Yeah. And then you get to know that one. These days, online relationships makes it easier for people to, I mean, we all have different identities. The virtual one and then who you are. So it's possible.
Can we also say that without trust, there cannot be any commitment?
Without trust, can there be commitment?
No.
Yes.
Yeah, let's debate it. Yeah. Augustine. The commitment, that is the effort to act towards the relationship. Can we do that in the absence of trust?
Yes, when there are these legal requirements in place.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a contract between two parties.
Yeah.
And you don't trust this party, so you have to bring in maybe counselors or lawyers. And now you have the mechanism in place for prosecution in case something goes wrong. This will cause him to be committed to the job.
Yeah. I think so. I think that you can be committed, and you see, like what you explained.
In that scenario, you would have still created the trust then if you are able to bring in the legalities and all that. Now you have the trust that should anything go wrong.
So the trust is not the natural. It's as a result of, you know, but usually when we say trust, we're talking about the natural growth of something. As soon as there are conditions, preconditions, they're not really as trust per se, because they are what you call inorganic. Because certain preconditions is making it act, which means someone can be committed to a relationship or can be committed to the process without necessarily having trust as the spine in holding that particular relationship. But it's as a result of the legal, construct or the procedural, processes. Do we agree?
Also with that, maybe your commitment, maybe at the individual level also, of course, can expand into the organizational level, giving some commitment to win someone's trust. I started a discussion on something, you don't seem to see or really clear about what I'm talking. But I see me committing time, energy, resources to this cause. Eventually, gets to paint a picture of your mind, this is possible, and we can go this far. So I think giving some commitment from the personal level,
you can develop, you can
help
evolve. Yeah, yeah. The reverse, however, is true. Trust definitely has commitment in it. You get the point? Because you can't develop a commitment without the trust being there. But you can develop
Trust.
the other way around. You understand? So like you're saying, perhaps the relationship can be going on as you're committed to the relationship over time. You can develop the trust level. And that even explains why most organizations start relationship from the legal perspective. And after having traded for a very long time, like we said, you then do away with those, bureaucracies and things like that, because you've then achieved a level of trust. And that's where your collateral comes in. If that level of trust that you think you've developed is not held to that esteem by each of the parties, maybe the person had the ulterior motive, then of course it goes the other way around. Which means you can actually build a relationship without necessarily having the trust, but other mechanisms supporting it until a time where the trust hold it, and then the other mechanism can actually spill away. The reverse, however, is.
So we can bring it to when we come to our personal relationship,
yeah.
Maybe a man and a woman relationship. Maybe a man may see a woman wants to maybe marry the woman, but the woman may not know the man. So sometimes may withdraw, but as time goes on,
committing to it, and then the trust level goes.
Coming closer, okay, let me give this man a chance.
So
then the woman try to understand the man.
Yeah, the example there, yeah, he's married. Yeah. So yeah, you've experienced this, isn't it? yeah, of course. You see, always is a woman who say, "Oh, I don't trust you." We never say we don't trust them. Yeah.
But I think when it comes to relationships, relationships are built on trust. You can ask most of the ladies to tell you, because when it comes to women, it's very difficult to give in. But when it comes to men, we can trust men.
Can we then say that? From the beginning, and that brings in another question, the transactional relational paradigm. Can we then say that from the beginning, where the relationship has to be supported by those legal constraints and those procedural processes, to the point where trust holds or takes hold, can we then say that that process is actually transactional? No relationship. But as soon as the engagement assumes relationship perspective, then it is about trust. Can we then argue that way too? Yeah. Because I think so. Because then we're saying that once the continuum goes from transactional, right from the